Okay, good evening, brothers and sisters in the Dharma. Today, BDMS is hosting this talk with Sis Sylvia as the speaker. This sutta should be quite interesting, Susima Sutta. Before we begin, let's pay homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. With reverence for the Buddha's words and attentiveness of mind, we strive to know the Dharma thoroughly, with diligence and care, so that we attain what the Buddha attained. We strive to practice the Dharma fully, with love in our hearts, and because truth is the greatest gift, we will share the Dharma generously with others. I think Sister Sylvia needs no further introduction. She has been here so many times. I shall skip that. Thank you. I shall now call upon Sister Sylvia.
Okay. Susimaparibbājaka Sutta. Paribbājaka means wanderer, the ascetics, the wandering ascetics. Okay. And the sutta was delivered by the Buddha to a wandering ascetic who actually joined his order. And this guy goes by the name Susima. So this sutta is very interesting, and I would like all of you to just pay attention to two themes. Number one, it's the question of power. What kind of power is an arahant supposed to have? And number two, what is enlightenment? When it is said that one is awakened, one is enlightened, what do we really mean by that? So this sutta will cover both themes beautifully, okay? And as always, we will start by getting the backdrop set. And it started like this. Thus have I heard, on one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. On the occasion, Blessed One was honored, respected, esteemed, venerated, and so on and so forth. So he got a lot of robes, alms, lodgings, medicinal requisites. These are the basic requisites that we present to sangha to help sustain life. Okay. Sangha was also similarly supported and respected. And so they also got a lot of requisites. But the wanderers of other sects were not so honored, respected, as esteemed, and so on. And they began to lose out in their collection of requisites. So I want to make the point here that in ancient time, this is the time of the Buddha. There were a lot of people, so much fighting over requisites. You see, essentially, the lay community, lay community is not a bottomless pit. They can support whomever they support. That's where they throw their resources. But everyone else will then have to fight for what's left. Okay. And in the time of the Buddha, in Rajagaha was a very popular place. It was an urban center. There were a lot of schools there. Buddha was just one of many schools. So in Rajagaha, there was a big fight over requisites. And we know that the fights got really vicious because at some point, these very jealous sects actually targeted the Buddha. They actually went ahead and attacked individual monks. It's not funny, huh? These guys are really vicious. Of course, they attacked the Buddha time and again. They slandered his name. They wanted to basically drag him through the mud. so that he would lose lay support. This is the context. It's a very vicious game. It also tells you that in the early days, right in the early days of the Buddha Sasana, he was already a celebrity Sangha member. He was a celebrity monk. Much support, very popular. His reputation really spread far and wide. Okay? And the fact that these wanderers were complaining amongst themselves tells you that he was very popular. Huh? And so they came along and they said to this Susima, you go infiltrate. They asked Susima to infiltrate the Sangha, lead the holy life under 𝗂𝘀𝗶 master, his Dhamma, teach it to us. In other words, in their mind, it must be something that the Buddha taught that was drawing large crowd. They believe that if they also knew what he was teaching, they too could win a lot of popular support. So Susima, silly fella, thought it was a good idea, obliged. And he went and approached Ananda. So what this tells you is Ananda must have been a popular figure. You know, of all the Sangha members, Ananda must have been the one who's friendly, easygoing. So they took him for a bit of a sucker. You know, this is the guy we will target. So they went to him and they said, hey, I want to join the Sangha. And Ananda happily brought Susima to the Buddha and told the Buddha that, oh, this guy Susima is interested in joining Sangha. The Buddha said, okay, give him the going forth. That's it. Huh? So the reason why I said that this must have been very early in the Sasana, in the Buddha's dispensation, because there was no vetting. Subsequently, there was a 3-month probation required of ascetics from other sects. During this period, there was not this requirement, which then tells you that it must have been quite early before Buddha had all kinds of problems from these ascetics. Okay? Must have been. So in the early days, everybody, in fact, if you study the history of the Sangha, the Sasana, you will know that it was so easy as, you know, the right at the beginning is the Buddha says, come, join me. That's it, they're in. Their membership for life. Much later on, they put in a process of evaluation of, it's actually not quite vetting, but it's more evaluation. People looking at the practitioner to size up whether or not the guy was really serious about wanting to join the Sangha, or were they there just to get the honors, all the little fruits of being a Sangha member, whether they were serious or they only want the spoils. Okay, so this is early days, and this is Rajagaha. Rajagaha, the odds are it was really the first 3 years. The odds are this would have been in the first 3 years or so of the Buddha Sasana. Okay, very early. Okay, on that occasion, a number of bhikkhu had declared final knowledge in the presence of the Blessed One, saying, we understand. I put in the Pali word here, pajanama. Pajanama, A-M-A means we. Okay? Pajan, you remember sampajana? The idea here is they know very well. They know for themselves very well. Destroy its birth. Holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. And Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, there is no more for this state of being. I put in Ajahn Sucato's translation, there is no return to any state of existence, because I think it's easier to understand. And this is consistent with the Pali words, okay? No more coming back into any state of existence. So you look at the phrase, the catchphrase, right? Destroy is birth. Holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. No state, no more state of this being. There are 4 things here, 4 points. Point number 1, whatever that they had seen and understood, there is the knowledge that they had effectively cut off the energy that gives rise to rebirth. They know it. And the holy life has been lived. This tells you that the goal of the practice is actually to arrive at this state where you can cut off the energy giving rise to rebirth. Okay? So they had taken the vow, they had opted to practice under Buddha, the Blessed One, for the explicit reason of destroying birth, the rebirth energy. Okay? And in order to be able to do that, the mind, they have to train, they have to go through a series of training so that they could see the mind for what it is. And then the mind knows how to turn itself away, which this will be covered later. So this thing about what had to be done has been done. The idea here is they have to be able to set in place the necessary condition for this process to end. And in their practice, they had succeeded in doing that. That is why there is no more this or other state. It won't start again. Okay? So Susima heard all these monks proclaiming. And it tells you it's very interesting. Huh? This is early days. My guess, as I said, my guess is this is within 3 years or so of the Buddha Sasana. So it's very early days. And you already have all these success stories of monks saying, we have achieved what had to be done. It tells you Buddha was very energetic. He was very successful in helping these people to see to the end of that rebirth process. And all these would generate tremendous faith. Okay? So the faith in the Buddha Sasana in this period would have been profound, powerful. Now Susima heard all this, and then he said, he went to them, he went to all these monks, and he said, then knowing and seeing thus. So you say you understood, you say you had ended birth, so now you know like that. Tell me, do you wield the various kinds of spiritual power, psychic powers, such that having been one, you become many, having been many, you become one, you appear and vanish, go unhindered through the walls, through a rampart, through a mountain, as though through space, you dive in and out of earth as though it were water, walk on water without sinking as though it was earth, seated cross-legged, travel in space like a bird, with your hand you touch and stroke the moon and sun, so powerful and mighty. You exercise mastery with the body as far as the Brahma world. So this set of psychic powers is really the control over the elements. Okay? It's control over your elements, your earth, fire, water, and so on, air. And this is literal. This is literal. This is not read between the lines and look for the figurative meaning. This is literal. Meaning these individuals' mind had reached a point where it can manipulate the molecules and atoms. Put it in modern science language, it's the molecules and atoms, and they can manipulate that, okay? Now, This is where I must say, this is the first of many psychic powers that Susima highlighted. And what Susima experienced was actually a pretty common assumption. Many people, even today, will associate psychic powers with one being enlightened. So if some so-and-so is said his reputation is such that he had psychic powers, therefore he must be enlightened. And vice versa. If he were enlightened, he had to have psychic powers. Otherwise, not enlightened. This sutta tells you categorically this assumption is wrong. Okay? It's categorical. So starting with this one, the first type, the first psychic power of manipulation of the elements, the enlightened monks said, don't have, we don't know. Okay. The second psychic power, he asked, do you have divine ear element surpassing human? You hear both kinds of sound, divine and human, far and near. So divine ears means hearing, the range, your hearing range exceeds that of human. Actually, if you explain it in modern science, it does not sound so incredible. Because you just take animals, right? Dogs, their hearing range far exceed the human, right? Cats, animals, very different hearing range. Dolphins have much different hearing range. But human, the typical human will have it within a certain frequency. What is believed, and again, I said this is literal, there are individuals who are able to widen that range significantly. And not just ear, eyes also. Anuruddha was known to be the guy with the divine eyes. So his range of vision exceeds the normal human. Here, Susima is specifically asking about hearing. Okay, and a lot of the monks in the time of the Buddha had no problem with this. That's how they communicated with the devas and the petas. More so the devas, and for the petas, it's more they witness the suffering. They hear the screams. They can hear that. Huh? And this one is very cute. This set is about mind reading, but not so much thoughts reading. It's mind reading. What's the difference? You look at what is said, understanding the mind and encompassing their mind with yours, such that you know that mind, yes or no, does it have lust, lobha, dosa, hatred, anger, delusion? Is it tight? Is it scattered? Does it rise? Is it elevated? Is it concentrated? Is it free? So here, if you're looking at the words here, it doesn't say specific thoughts, not word for word. You, in your mind, you say, don't like you. In his mind, it says, you don't like me. It's not like that. It really is, he's sensing, he is able to sense these core defining feature. Okay? The flavor as opposed to the ingredient. Huh? I know, I have heard of schools in meditation that insist that their yogis, their practitioners must see past life before they can understand before you can, they will say that, oh, you are on the right track. Meaning, being able to see past life is a prerequisite for affirmation of enlightenment. Here, it tells you it is not so. Susima specifically asked these monks, can you see your past life? And the word, by the way, the word is recollect. Recollecting your various past way of life, the different births, and then you look at the details, name, the family, what you look like, the things you eat, experience of pleasure and pain, lifespan, passing away, moving on. There are details, you know. So in the practice, for some of us who have this idea that, oh, we are seeing past life, know that in the Buddhas, in the canon, it is captured as having details to the point of having names, the kind of food that you eat. You see, if you ask yourself, this life, what do you remember? Honestly, you don't remember a lot of things, but you remember all the big pains and all the lovely pleasure points, right? All the show, and all the so sad. These two you sure to remember. Your names you remember. Family, immediate family members, the ones closest to you, you remember. And the food. But all the little details, you may not remember much of it. It's just like big brush strokes and that's it. So you look at what he said here, he highlighted here, food. The thing they remember is food. The power of food over our minds. Because it's tremendous pleasure and of course source of much displeasure. Your cooking's so bad. Source of much displeasure. And the dying moment. You see that? Passing away from there. Dying process is traumatic and people remember. Wait, I think I missed that one. Do you, with the divine eyes purified, surpasses the human, see beings passing away, being reborn, inferior, superior, beautiful, ugly, fortunate, unfortunate, and so on, how beings fare in accordance with karma, those engaged in misconduct of body, speech, and mind, who reviled the noble ones, held wrong views, undertook action based on wrong view, with the breakup of the body, end up worse. But those who engage in good conduct do not go around and revile the noble ones, held right view, undertook action based on right view, after death, reborn in good destination. Now, this portion, I think I should explain a little bit more. This thing about right view and wrong view, if you recall, I gave a really long talk on this. Views affect very much the way you will react to the world, the way you judge the world, the way you read the world, and then you respond. Wrong views, essentially, to cut a very long talk short, wrong views are essentially the kind of views that lead to one having disregard for cruelty or goodness, meaning you don't think that doing good or bad is going to make any difference to your life. It has no consequences, so you don't care. The thing about wrong view is you could end up undertaking very cruel actions, very evil actions, because you don't believe there are consequences to actions. Wrong views also typically mean that you don't really care about people. You don't really bother about gratitude and repayment. You're in effect, in short, a really nasty character. Wrong view can lead you that way, okay? So in our teaching, there is a huge emphasis on straightening your views. understanding consequences to wrong speech, action, and even thoughts. And then you avoid undertaking actions that cause you more pain, even in this life. Okay, so here it's someone with a capacity to see into different dimensions, and therefore you could see life transition, workings of karma. And of course they say don't have. So this is the one, okay? This is the one. Do you dwell in peaceful deliverance that transcend forms and the formless attainments, having touched them with the body? This is Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. In Pali, rupe arupa te kayena. Rupe arupa means form and formless meditation. Okay? With the body, te kayena, with the body, pusitva viharata, having touched, dwells. That's why it's translated in that way. Bhante Acharya Sujato translated it as direct meditative experience of the peaceful liberations that are formless, transcending form. Actually, this is not, you heard what I translated for you in Pali. Essentially is, are you able to meditate in such a way that the mind, why with the body? When the meditation is deep, you can actually feel the body as very still. Okay? And it goes from there, from the form to the mind, but it will start from the form. The body feels very still. There is a steadiness, there is a weighted steadiness. And this is effortless. The word that says it is effortless is the phrase that says pusitva, having touched kayena, viharata, you dwell. Very effortless. You just steady, huh? Steady lah. And they said, no. Then he exclaimed, how could this be? Because he's going down the line. Huh? He go to the point of, what about my meditation? Can you do meditation? Then they say, no. And he said, how could this be? He said, we are liberated by wisdom. Now, I must stress, this is deep meditation. Huh? To this level is deep meditation. It's not the, what you call, what's that phrase that they like to call? Like a neighborhood thing. It's just, you have the jhanic factors. You have the jhanic factors, but you don't go deeper and become still. These guys are still, okay? So they said, okay, in purple, I summarize whatever they say, and then they replied no, and he exclaimed, how could this be? The black words are all the translation. And then he said, I do not understand in detail the meaning of what has been stated in brief by you. And then they say, whether you understand, it's liberated by wisdom. Okay? So here, this stanza seems to imply that there were arahants who do not do deep meditation. This is not no samadhi. Samadhi comes at different levels. This is deeper samadhi, deeper level. Okay? For the mind to be able to start observing itself, what you would need is sustained degree of mindfulness. Sustained degree of mindfulness. Clarity, you can see there is detachment, you understand what's going on, you don't have to go very still. And the fact that all these monks said they had none of the above psychic powers actually means they're not that still. Okay, not deep jhana. So Susima not happy. He not satisfied. He went to the Buddha and he reported the conversation in full. I didn't want to retrace the steps. And then he asked for clarification. And Buddha said, First, Susima, comes knowledge of the stability of the Dhamma. Afterwards, knowledge of Nibbana. The Pali word Dhamma Atiti, Jnana. Jnana is knowledge of the true nature of the Dhamma. Okay? Knowledge of the true nature of the Dhamma. Then, knowledge of Nibbana. So the translation is Zun. Okay? Susima said, I don't understand. Explain more. So this is a very determined seeker. I will not explain this yet because the Buddha is going to explain it in full. Okay? Now, this is where we are going into an understanding of how to look at the mind properly in regular life. When you look at these words, to you, there may be a part in you that say, I know all these words. This is tilakkhana, and this is the aggregates. I know all these words. So if I were to read to you the words, you may not find it terribly meaningful. Instead, I am going to try and help you to feel, to understand more intuitively what is being taught here. You must constantly refer to your own mind, okay? Don't just look at the words. I want you to try and link back to your own mind and your own experience. And the first part says, if you look at form, permanent or impermanent, form, you will say, okay, form intuitive, conceptually it's impermanent. Form, look at your own body, the pain that you experience, the discomfort, the ease, the nature of your fingers and your form. Knowing science today, if you look into the form, we all know some science today. For even the ones who have zilch knowledge know some science today. You know there's blood vessels. You know there is something called blood pressure. You know blood sugar level. This is such a big thing, right? You even know, just look, what goes in must come out. That's also form. So when you reflect on this line, form, permanent or impermanent, when you reflect on this line, don't just think of it as words. Spare a thought to land on your own form and have this sense that the form is mortal. The form will die. It will age, it will fall sick, it will die. The meaning of the word permanent of impermanent or impermanent of a form refers to the mortality of your form. And over here, this part we don't reflect enough. Then the Buddha said, what is impermanent? Dukkha or sukha, suffering or happiness. And even Susima, who knew nothing, said suffering. Now the question is why? Why is it something impermanent is suffering? If you really understood impermanence, here your answer definitely is suffering. And why is that? Because you think about your own mortality. Think about the fact that a day will come when you and your loved one will transit from this world, must leave the world as you know it. Reflecting like this, dukkha or sukha? Automatically dukkha. And I've always said, anyone who spend their life or their mind, either themselves or they being with another, knowing end game is near, cannot really enjoy life. Because there is a part in them that doesn't want this to end. Yet knowing that that is inevitable makes it painful. So this question here, form, permanent, impermanent, is something impermanent, dukkha or sukha, suffering or happiness. That is the connection, okay? So for people who say, oh, Buddha taught impermanent, suffering, and non-self, right? You don't get it. This is not the sequence. You have to take one step back and really reflect on the very nature of form being mortal. And as such, it is painful. It is painful. Okay? I will go on. I'm not going to touch the third one yet. Huh? And you look at other things. Feeling, permanent or impermanent. Sanya, perception, permanent or impermanent. Form is so gross in your face and so perceived to be so steady. Form, the version, it doesn't change very much. And yet we know, moment to moment, it is changing. Let alone all those mental states, the mental experiences, the cognitive experiences, feeling, perception, volitional formations, consciousness. Every single of this is clearly impermanent. Then the question is, oh, then why should it be dukkha? Because what is impermanent? We're talking about mental states now, because what is impermanent is intrinsically unstable. Intrinsically unstable. And intrinsically, because it is intrinsically unstable, it will never give you that assurance that you want. It will never give you assurance. Feelings, it's all transient. What assurance? We live life seeking some degree of assurance. If you don't believe, you stare deep into your mind. Why do you want a good job? Why do you want to marry well? Why do you want to have good children? Why do you seek good friends? Because there is a part in us that know we are vulnerable. There is a degree of vulnerability in life and existence. There's something intrinsically unstable. So you look for stability in other things, external things, the instinct of the regular mind. But here the Buddha is shoving it in our face, that what we take to be true and real is intrinsically unstable and as such not dependable, dukkha. And then you take this as mine, I, myself. What is impermanent, suffering, subject to change? Should it be regarded as this is mine, this I am, this is myself? Then you say, I have heard this many times, I still don't understand. Okay. This is mine, this I am, this is myself. These are three parts that if you can, right here and now, you try to follow, okay? You try to understand this. the expression, subsequently I'll show you the Pali words. The expression, etang mamang, this is mine. If you look at your own mind, right, to perceive things as you own, whether it's your car or your house or your clothes or the people you care for, to perceive this as yours, there is a sense of stability there. There is a sense that I'm okay because I own car, I own bank accounts, I own house, I have access to food. There is that sense that I'm okay. Sweet. So the idea of mine has to do with an assurance. Okay? Implicit there. You may not think very hard, but if you think a bit more, you will realize that when you're talking about mine, it's the assurance that that which you take as necessary for your happiness and pleasure is yours to use. You are entitled to it. No one will take it from you. So it's a sense of false security, if you like. What is taken as mine, which gives you this false security and sense of accomplishment, what you take as mine is an expression of I, what you are. Because intrinsically, you are nothing. What are you? You are nothing. But from what you can see and own, you can say, there's something tangible here. I am this. That is why a car, a house, wealth makes people feel good about themselves. Part of the reason, because if you don't eat the money, right? It's just bank account numbers only, ma. Why should that make you feel good about yourself? But yet it does. For many people, it does. Because what is mine gives me assurance, security. Because it gives me security, makes me feel good about myself. I'm so clever. I earn so much money. I'm so fortunate. My parents leave me that, or my loved ones leave me so much money. Whatever it is lah. So the more superficial you are, the more you will park your identity in something external. A painting, golden eggs. So hopelessly external. If you have a little bit more depth, you will go into something like, oh, I'm musically inclined. I play good music. I own the skill to play good music. Everything about you stems from something you own. That's the point. I have good grades. I am smart. Something like that lah. I can speak many languages. I own the skill to speak many languages. That makes me linguist. I know so much about the Dhamma. That makes me, I don't know what, smart. I'm running out of vocabulary. But the idea here is what you own becomes an extension of an identity that you also own. And you say that that is I. Can you see from just these two lines how powerful this is? This is you. It's not just words, huh? These words carries a ton of meaning. The expression of every single being stems from the idea that there are things that he owns, which says a lot about him. And all these collective narratives about him tells you there is a permanent self. The three of them are linked. It doesn't appear from nowhere. Okay? So this is mine. This I am, because this is mine. This is how, this is kasa. Don't change the words. This is mine. Because of this, I am. See that? See the part, the beauty of this word? Because of this, I am. And this, all these is myself. So the third one, the self, is a construction of two, which is a construction from one. All three are linked. And that is why you go back to the thing, is what is impermanent, suffering. Impermanent is therefore dukkha. So if this is impermanent and dukkha, can you then take the form, feeling, perception, volitional formation, consciousness, can you then take these as this is mine, this I am, this is myself? All of this are not reassuring, are not steady, rock steady. They are temporary, very transient. In what is transient, what are you holding? That's what it means. What are you owning? If you own none of these, where is yourself? Where is the I? And if there were no I's, what are you talking about self? Do you see that now? I can't help but I ask questions like, do you see that? I see all this like no reaction. I tell you what, do me a favor and like, so at least I know that I'm making some impact and people are understanding what I'm saying, okay? The fact that Susima readily agreed with the Buddha tells you tilakkhana is self-evident. Now, you may say, oh, he's being polite. Hello, Susima going around infiltrate the place. He's going to be a spy. He's spying on the sangha so that he can gather material and help the wanderers. He is not here to be respectful and accommodating, okay? So the fact that he agreed, yes sir, no venerable sir, right, means he understood, which also then tells you that suffering, in what is suffering, in what is impermanent, dukkha, in what is dukkha, in what is impermanent and dukkha, not my, not I, not self, not I am, not self, is actually not the miracle. It is not the part that this is not that part that wakes up. It is not that, because Susima understood. You really wake up, it has to shift the lens. From this, lens can shift. But understanding this conceptually, even now, if you understand a bit deeper, that is still not waking up yet, okay? Now, this part is beautiful. Any form, any kind of form, whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, should be seen as it really is with the wisdom, the correct wisdom. Thus, this is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. The Pali word, netang, na, etang, this, mama, mine. Na, so N is na, eso, ahang, asmin, ne so hang asmin. So it's not this I am. I am not this. This I am not, okay? Na niso ata. This is not myself. This is not myself, okay? Now, you look at your own mind. Just take a look at, if you ask yourself, right, the regular mind, how does it identify with something? How does it identify? First part of identification, time construct, past, future, present. Meaning to say, the mind can travel, right? You can travel to an I in the past, an I in the future. This time travel capability creates the illusion or delusion that there is an I, identity that exists in different timeline. That already will create the delusion of a self. Collective narratives, I told you. So the first way that the mind creates is that time construct, giving rise to the delusion of an I existing between time. The second is this thing called internal and external. You see, there is an external world, there is a world which we recognize as not within our control. It is a world out there. So there is a sound, there are sights, there's smell, etc., etc. There is a world out there. You can call it conventional reality, it doesn't matter. It's just a world out there. That is external. But we know, all of us have a very rich world in there, the mind world. And this mind world can be aligned to what's out there, or can be completely distinct from what's out there. So this idea of what's out there and what's in here tells you, gives us the idea that, hey, we are special. There's a special world in here. You don't understand how I feel. You see, there's a special world in there. Isn't that how we all talk? How I feel, what I think, it's all in there. And this creates the idea that both exist. That exists, this exists. And this has to go out and engage. So the I goes in and out. Then the third construct is, I tweak it a bit because it flows. The third construct, I call it the ego construct, right? This notion of inferior and superior is the instinct of everybody to compare. Height also compare, weight also compare, color also compare, everything we compare. When we compare, we also perpetuate the delusion that there are individuals, and I am parked within this range. Where do I land? Where do I land in the spectrum of my mind, the internal world, and in the spectrum of the world out there, the external world? And can you see how time construct, duality construct, ego construct, just these three alone, already the idea is consolidating. Gross and subtle. Gross are the tangible. So as I was explaining to someone, you can own things which are tangible. There is a world out there tangible that you have a relationship with, and some belongs to you in the eyes of the law until you die, then in which case it will be divided happily. And the subtle one is this construct. Idea, ideology, justice, revenge. All these are very subtle ideas, right? They're very subtle, but very real. Very real. And you will say things like my view. View now becomes associated with your identity. This is my view. It's an extension of your identity, and therefore it will affirm the sense of the eternal self, Because this eternal self owns things, has identity, and can tell you a lot of story about what has happened in the past and the future. And in the world's mind, there is this fella. The world's mind, external, the world's mind, there is this fella. In my mind, there is this fella. This fella exists. You see what I'm saying? Okay? Spatial construct, far and near. And this is quite straightforward. What you see becomes more real, and it creates its own distance, space, and so on and so forth. It's not as critical, but if you put these together, right? When you put these together, what you have is a mind that constantly, you just fly into this all the time. Form, feeling, perception, volitional formation, and together consciousness. All of your aggregates will fly around on these clusters, going mine, 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 therefore I, and collectively my permanent self. So here the Buddha was pointing out in summary to Susima how the practice should be. That in everything that you know, at the moment you deal with the 5 aggregates, wherever they land, you say, this is not mine. You don't own it. You don't hold it. When you say this is mine, there is that ownership, and there will be pride or dismay if it is important enough. So this is where your comparison comes in, because this is an expression of an identity. And if you can really knock, this is not mine, eventually, this I am not becomes very easy. The one to knock is, this is not mine. Because when you can knock, this is not mine, if you can knock that, the identity will move. You know? Okay, never mind. Okay, sorry, yeah. Sorry. What happened to my sharing? Sorry. I think my sharing died. Okay. Continue. So far, okay, yeah? We're moving on. When the noble disciple experiences revulsion or disenchantment, nibbindati, towards form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness, seeing thus he experiences revulsion. Experiencing revulsion, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, his mind is liberated. So here there are 3 steps, okay? Plus one more earlier on, 4 steps. Huh? The practice requires the 4 steps. Step 1. Actually, if you push it even further back, I'll say 5 steps. You push it further back, right? First, you got to learn to recognize your aggregates. Form, feeling, perception, volitional formation, consciousness, it's just there. Huh? At least that 4 you can recognize. As soon as you experience it, as soon as you are aware of whatever you are aware of, you must say, not mine. This is not mine. To break the habit of the mind to very quickly own it, that becomes an identity. So your mind has to be able to, this is not mine. When you say this is not mine, then that identity part, right? This is about I, right? That part will shake. You do this often enough, he said, they will experience revulsion. Okay, I picked the word to explain a bit more. Nibbindati It's a sense of 闲了, tired already, weary. So revulsion is a very strong word. Perhaps for some, it is experienced that way. A milder version will be tired. What are you tired of? And this is where, at the bottom, I explain like this. You see, the regular mind, the typical mind, works in the opposite way. When they experience an aggregate, they will say, this is mine, right? They get caught up in the aggregate. You have a feeling, the feeling feels so real. This is my feeling. Caught up, invested, you own it. And you very often, the regular mind, in how it experiences, they will own. And it has to be from, why do you want to own it? In anticipation of pleasure, or the reverse, in rejection, in aversion, steadying yourself for the pain. Either way, it's still the extreme. So it's either you think about it and say, I like it, and then you're thinking of the pleasure, or he's going to scold me, he's going to scold me, and then you're thinking of the pain, and you're averse to it. The fear arises. You are also invested in the pain, either or. But we tend to, of course, anticipate, live in eager anticipation of pleasure. That one we like. So the result is typical mind. If you're talking about feelings, right? The mind, it caught up in the aggregate. It's anticipating everything. It's caught up. It's telling its own story already. What is happening? The mind is caught in its own mind-made fetters. The pleasure that you think about, that you revisit again and again, 是自己做出来的吗? You go and think, you go and revisit. Didn't you pull out your own fetter? See what I'm saying? So a lot of us, whether it is pain or pleasure, the mind revisit and pull it out. You're tying yourself up. Literally, deliberately. Okay? So experiencing revulsion, the mind gets, it's not the Pali word, right? This is actually exactly as is. When it is dispassion, it is free. In that freedom, there is the knowledge of the freedom. See that? When it's repulsed, when it is averse, it develops dispassion, no deep passion. Raja is passion, raga is passion. It's viraja. Virajati, no passion. So the idea here, it has a step. You see something, why is there wariness? Because you realize it's gone into an old habit of going to look for the pleasure. It doesn't want to do that. It sees it as impermanent and not self, and obviously not mine and not identity. It doesn't seek out, it doesn't experience the same delight and gratification as before. When you are blind, when you are ignorant, you get trapped and you indulge happily. When you are no longer blind, but you are weak, then you get drawn and you may indulge. You may. But after you indulge, you kick yourself sometimes. Or it may well be that you go, again, why is this happening again? Why is the sensation coming on strong for that? So there is a sense that I don't like this habit. I don't like this inclinations. So the revulsion, that aversion has to do with, instead of, when you see the craving, instead of delighting and let's just chong, the mind goes, not again. And you turn away. And then after a while, when you become more familiar with the rising and falling of these sensations, the mind comes, it gets to a point where the mind says, it's just like that, don't worry, it will fluctuate, and then it will dissipate. It will fluctuate and it will dissipate. The craving will fluctuate and dissipate. It's okay, don't worry about that. So the arahant, this one is the arahant, he reaches a point where the mind is completely unaffected, completely dispassionate, completely unaffected. Completely unaffected, without any ignorance whatsoever. There will come, because the point is the liberation. He will feel that his mind is not trapped by any preconceived notion, any ideas, any expectations, the mind doesn't have any of those. The mind is free. Okay? When the mind has no preconceived notions, no fear of being trapped, no caught up, disinterested, the mind is free. Okay? And so that's how he would know. Destroy its birth, holy life has been lived, what has to be done has been done, no more state of this, no more of for this state of being. Okay? Now, there is a part 2. This, anyone can recognize, this is dependent origination, right? But the way the Buddha explained it here is actually a little easier to follow. And I said here, for the uninitiated, birth, death, correlation is the most obvious. With birth as a condition, death comes to be. Aging and death comes to be. So Susima said yes. With existence, once there is birth, once there is life, this is, okay, Bhava has been translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi as existence, being. I think Ajahn Sujato translates it as being, I'm not sure, but the idea here is being, present, alive. With being as a condition, birth happens, okay? Birth comes to be. With clinging as condition, existence. So it goes backward. Because of clinging as a condition, existence comes to be. Because of craving as a condition, clinging comes to be. With feeling as a condition, craving comes to be. No, you just have to sit back and you look at that particular state. Let's take one that is very obvious. Feeling as a condition. Because there is such a thing as feeling, craving arises. So this is correct. Because there is such a thing as contact, feeling arises. So what the Buddha was doing here was to help Susima connect some dots. Okay? And if you recall, in the initial part, the Buddha said, when there is stability of knowledge of the Dhamma, there will be knowledge of Nibbana. Remember that? That was that line that I didn't want to explain earlier. Okay, I show you. This is the second part on cessation. Buddha was trying to show how cessation of knowledge. So the knowledge is the knowledge of the stability of the Dhamma. Okay? Knowledge of stability of Dhamma. What does it mean? This is the nature of how the mind works. When there is ignorance, the construction starts. So I now go back to the normal, usual way that you're familiar with. When there is ignorance, ignorance means, you know what we always say, ignorant of the Four Noble Truths. Basically what it means is the regular mind very instinctively leans towards pleasure with a almost ostrich-like instinct to disregard dukkha, a regular mind. So the driving force for any regular person, the driving force in his life, that driving force keeps leaning towards pleasure. Keeps leaning towards pleasure. That is why sankhara, with ignorance as a condition, your volitional activity leans towards craving. It will lean towards wanting. This is your driver. This part of the connection is very critical to understand. I know people get very fixated about the other elements, which I will show you. They get very fixated about Shankara, Vijnana, Nama Rupa, Sala Yatana, it goes on. Don't go there yet. Because in effect, actually, they are all aggregates. Your Sankara, Vijnana, Nama Rupa, they are aggregates. The key point starts at the beginning. Because of ignorance, because the mind does not pay heed to dukkha as a fundamental feature in life, because of that, instinctively, volitionally, we will drive towards pleasure, drive towards being averse towards pain, biased towards pleasure. We are never really neutral. Meaning to say, neither pain nor pleasure, the mind, unless you are a very solid practitioner, the typical mind will lean towards some anticipation of pleasure, or at least don't want pain. There is that choice that is very instinctive. So volitional formation starts there. Your bias is there. Because of that, as a natural bias, your entire mental ambience, your entire baseline consciousness, your entire baseline leans in that general direction. Leans that way. Now, because of Shankara as a driving force, there is consciousness. Because of consciousness as a base, and they are all sitting on top of each other. They are not thought process. They're all sitting together. Do you understand this point? This is very important. They're sitting together. They're not a string. Shankara, because of ignorance. But because Shankara is a condition for consciousness to arise. It's just there. And embedded in consciousness as your condition is Namarupa. Namarupa, when there is no consciousness, there is no Namarupa. It's just a condition. It's a stage. Namarupa, embedded in Namarupa is this leaning capacity, right? There's this leaning, Manasikara is there. There is a contact capacity, etc., etc. So Nama Rupa as it's basically the mind having that capability, but it must have consciousness there. Then there is six sense bases. Consciousness there, Nama Rupa sits on it, there is conscious, there is six sense bases. Six sense bases is possible. Okay? Think of it as they're all sitting on each other. So don't get, there is no need to get too hang up about that. But if you continue, when there is contact, there is feeling. When there is feeling, there is craving. When there is craving, there is clinging. And then the dukkha subsequently will start. So what is going on here? The Buddha is saying, or was saying, that all these natural state for everybody, this is the driving force of the regular mind. An enlightened mind will then start without the ignorance, but all other minds all other minds which has not purged that ignorance will still lean towards pleasure of sort, leans towards this instinctive, very subtle, very embedded desire for pleasure, good feeling. There is a preference that is very instinctive. And all these, how does this link to the other one, but not self, not I, not mine? He's basically unpegging the mind. You can actually don't look at this and just look at that part. You want to train your mind to become distant, be able to maintain a certain distance to craving, feelings, to maintain that distance. You can train yourself by just saying all the aggregates that you become aware of, not mine, no I, not self. You don't have to really unpack in this order. This is a training tool, okay? When you begin to understand how the mind works, this formula becomes obvious. But if you can't quite get it, you can't figure your way into a realization using the formula. The training doesn't work like that, okay? And then it goes in the reverse. You can end birth, aging, and death ends. You can end ignorance, dukkha ends, craving ends. So the idea is to show how when there is cessation of ignorance, knowledge of the stability of the mind. The idea here is that the mind is the mind, all minds, all living beings' mind is governed by the same principle. The same principle. You penetrate that understanding, you penetrate that principle, the mind will eventually let go, uncling by itself. You can't penetrate that principle, the mind cannot uncling. So what is this principle that we are trying to penetrate? It's really the Four Noble Truths. The tilakkhana, the dependent origination, these are all the principles of Dhamma. They are that which governs the mind, the nature of the mind. You understand this, you will know how the mind can uncling, unwhole. And that is when you can taste Nibbana. Okay? And this one, I will, because it's a story, we don't end it properly. Susima, hearing all this, he apologized. He admitted to having committed a transgression. And he admitted that he was there as a spy. He was going to steal Dhamma, knowledge of Dhamma. And the Buddha said to him, yes, you had committed a transgression. If Susima had not admitted this mistake and had his forgiveness from the Buddha would forgive him for it. If he had not had this element, Buddha said, being killed, executed, publicly executed, it's nothing compared to the pain that will come about in his future lives. But since you see your transgressions and you make amends in accordance with the Dhamma, we forgive you. For it is growth in the noble one's discipline when one sees transgression as a transgression, makes amends for it in accordance with the Dhamma, and undertake future restraint. There are three points here to bear in mind. If you are on this path, you must know when you have made a mistake. Sees transgression as a transgression. You don't get defensive. You don't talk big. You don't come out with all kinds of excuses. In your mind, you know you made a mistake. You admit it. And you make amends, pay back, make amends in accordance with the Dhamma. So there are rules that they have. And he will have to go through their understood rules. And you admit that there was a wrong. You, in your mind, you must pay back, make amends. It's some form of assuring yourself. It's actually not the world saying you must pay back. Hello, you must pay back. It's not like that. It's actually yourself feeling better after you had done something in accordance with the Dhamma, okay? Consistent with the teaching. And then there must be a part that say, I won't do this ever again. Okay? So the power of the arahant essentially is knowledge, wisdom, and insight. Okay? And how does he know that he's awakened to it? Because he knows how the mind works. What the Buddha had explained earlier on in terms of the mind eventually not seeing that he owns the aggregates, that the aggregate is a reflection of him, his identity, and that there is a permanent self. He has none of those things with regards to the aggregates. He is very clear in his mind about the proclivity that we have, that very subtle instinct in us that leans towards pleasure, that kind of, we know the Four Noble Truths, but never mind, we still must taste a bit, enjoy a bit, right? That, they don't have it anymore. They know how it breaks. And so it sinks right deep into their consciousness. There is nothing in them that leans towards anything. The point is they don't lean towards anything. You remember how when Buddha is invited for lunch, for his meals, and there is this phrase that goes, Buddha consented in silence. You remember that phrase? Very famous, popular. I mean, it's always reported like that. Why silence? Why yes, no, why silence? The mind doesn't lean towards anything. Like that, leans towards nothing. So when it leans towards nothing, you ask, he doesn't say anything, he accepts. He's Buddha not tarik haga, he's not playing hard to catch. It's just doesn't lean, doesn't push, doesn't have preference, doesn't seek, nothing. Then there is another very interesting phrase that comes out. It goes like this: a thought arises. A thought arises. Have you heard of this? You've seen it before? Regular mind thinks. Okay? Regular mind will have a lot of thoughts, volitional formations all over the place. Why? Because the regular mind has a lot of desire. You look at the mind when it is running. It runs based on desires, cravings, preferences. It can be very subtle, but it's always there, always running because of desire somewhere, craving somewhere. Bhava, vibhava, karma, tanha, it's always driving. So these are the little batteries that keeps thoughts going. As practitioner, we try and keep the mind present so that it doesn't drift all over the place. And how do we do that? We actually anchor it on wholesome thoughts. So it's not about yourself, it's not about your pleasure. You wish people well. Your metta. The idea is to keep the mind wholesome and present. When the mind is wholesome, it will be present. If the mind is unwholesome, it gets caught up. For 1 minute, it can be very present, but this is sati. So like a serial killer planning his kill, right? I assume he will be very present. He's going to be very careful about how he plans his way, right? He's very present, but it's very akusala. And the odd thing is these guys can be quite feelingless, neutral, because it's present. But the moment they start to recall and enjoy, then the mind has gone off the mindfulness already. The pleasure will then drive that mind. So any mind that is kusala, very kusala, you will find that there is a certain steadiness and presentness. Any mind that leans towards the akusala will run. Sooner or later, it will run. It can hang around for a short while and then it will fly. Okay? So you say that we have a mind that is always drifting all over the place. It means that the mind has a lot of wanting and a lot of craving, a lot of thinking, therefore. The arahants, they do not have so many thoughts. They know exactly when a thought arises. And other than that, present moment only. Mind is present, it's peaceful, it is not in dukkha. There is just that state of quiet bliss. Okay? Question?
To be liberated, one has to have the knowledge of removing the taints, not necessarily see past lives and the working of karma by direct knowledge. Does this imply that this knowledge of destroying the taints is possible without jhāna?
Based on this sutta, Susima Sutta, I will say that it would imply, from that stanza, it would imply that you don't need deep jhāna. If you're going by that stanza, which I had pointed out to everyone earlier, it would imply that you don't need deep jhāna. Deep jhāna is not the same as having no jhāna, no jhānic factors, okay? Jhānic factors, the presence of jhānic factors means the mind is wholesome and steady. There has to be enough steadiness and presentness, present awareness. There has to be enough, sustained enough, so that the mind can actually see for itself the very subtle energy of craving. These are very subtle mental states. Without recognizing certain features of the mind, there is no way you can destroy any taints. You don't even recognize taints. So I am very careful not to say you don't need jhāna, because in the first place, people have all kinds of ideas about jhāna, right? From the deepest to the less deep, to the more superficial. But jhānic factors, you must be familiar with them. The piti, the sukha. Piti is this rapture, this joy, this deep joy, this tranquility. The mind that comes together is present, it's aware. Those you need, okay? Those you definitely need. You don't have those, there is no way this mind can see the taints, okay? 4 requisites is general requisites that also apply to other ascetics other than Buddha's disciples, right? Yes. Okay, you see, in the time of the Buddha, life was a lot simpler. Today, we have all kinds of things that you can offer, okay? In the time of the Buddha, society was not that rich. And they don't have all kinds of consumer items. spread different brand from different parts of the world and so on and so on. They don't have that. They don't have mass production such that society is overflowing with products. They don't have that. The key basics that everybody needs to survive, needs to live on, these are the four. And if you look at it, they are actually really, really basics. From food to clothing for modesty, to a shelter, to medicine for healing, even shelter. Did you know that Buddha initially also never talk about shelter? The earliest time. You look at what, for the monks, right? The Buddha's time, when the sangha was very young and the Buddha was rather new, they don't have a lot, and the Buddhas just said, these are the basics that we need. Alms. Do you know what's alms? Alms is not just food. Alms is a lump of another's plate. That's alms. Meaning, if I sit down to eat and I see a sangha coming, I will get up and say, may I offer you one lump? And then he will accept that one lump. This was the earliest of time. So the sangha takes very little from the lay community. But as supporters grow, as the numbers grow, and richer and more powerful supporters came along, then they started offering really good food, dedicated food for the sangha. But that came later, not in the earlier days, not in the earliest of days. Okay? And in the earliest of days, the Buddha, when he talks about a place to stay, right, the shelter, right, he calls it Rukka Mula. Mula is the root. Rukka is tree, at the foot of a tree. That was their shelter. He never asked for anything. And the clothes, the robe that they have, originally they was just to salvage it from wherever they can find it. And in the old days, I don't know how far this is true. I have not done my research on this, but I have heard of how robes, the cloth is taken from cemetery and sewn together, and therefore that's why it's impetuous. It's actually discarded cloth that they salvage and sew together to make a bigger piece of covering for themselves. And in the earliest of time, there was no must be this color, cannot other color. No, the only thing that differentiates a sangha member, a monk, a bhikkhu from another is the shaven head. They are the ones who shave their head. And so it's not the color, the saffron color that we're familiar with, it's not that. It's really the shaven head that differentiated them. Then over time, when sangha became very well supported, very, very well supported, we know because the rules got thicker. The more rules meant that the sangha was growing very big. And it was the Buddha himself who said, when the sangha has grown big and rich and powerful, that would be when all kinds of characters will start to join the order for all the wrong reasons. Yeah. Okay. So yes, everyone else would also get similar kind of treats. Gross or subtle, can this mean the sense of self, the self in the body, gross, subtle and gross, the universal self as in the Brahma? Maybe, but it could be. I read it more as what is tangible and what is intangible. Because you see how the mind lands. It lands on ideas. To me, ideas are very subtle, very intangible. Values, views, they're all very intangible. Whereas everything else, the form, you should say the form, or you say whatever material out there. They are the gross. They are tangible, what you can see, what you can touch. Whereas when it comes to views and ideas, you can't see, you can't touch. And that's the missing part, isn't it? If you look at everything else, right? This part is that missing part. Time, distance, comparison, external, internal. What's the missing part? It's your ideas, your views, and they are so much a part of you. You think about it. If you look at that, the Buddha never missed out anything. He doesn't miss out. You go and study the kind of things that he highlight with regards to one point, you will find that he has covered the ground. But this part about ideas and views and values, culture, dreams, hopes, aspiration, this is not covered anywhere in the other categorization, the other categories. So I think this subtle is really referring to the mind objects. And for many of us, the mind objects are very precious, right? You have martyrs who are prepared to die for their beliefs. What about beliefs? It's just ideas, but you're prepared to die for it. Because embedded in those ideas is the sense of self. It's a sense of self, which you can, I own the idea, I hold the idea, these ideas are about I. This idea am I. And when you remember the person, what do we remember? Or even deeds, deeds are also very subtle, right? It's something that is not quite achievements, success, and all these funny words. They're all very intangible. When you think of someone who has passed on, his life is over, then you think about him. What do you say about this person? You don't say anything about his car, his house. The man's a great man, he has a big house. But it's all about what he had done and what he had contributed. In terms, the legacy is he was the founder of the evolution theory, something like that. Oh, so beautiful. Oh, these are very subtle, right? What is 𝗂𝘁𝗁? Japanese word. I don't know, able body. What is this fixation about a body here? Okay, I move on first. Seems to be a lot of questions. How does this relate to the teaching of contact? Because feeling results from contact. We still need to experience contact and feeling. I don't understand this question. How does this relate to the teaching of contact? Because feeling results from contact. We still need to experience contact and feeling in order for us to experience nibbida. I don't understand this question. Whoever asked this question, if you don't mind, can you clarify here? Unless someone else understands it. I move on first. So question 5, if you look at the chat, question 5, I don't understand the question. I need some help to understand this.
Sylvia, just now actually you were talking about, actually you need to experience it and then you experience it again and again and then you feel the nibbida, right? You, because you're so sick of it, you so, sian liao. So, but I don't know because I thought we're supposed to, there's this teaching about contact and how we can like nip it in the bud, not even have that feeling. No.
Who thought that?
Maybe it's me.
No, you're not wrong. I know of, I suddenly recall that that there are people who say it like this. You're right. You're not wrong here.
What about Bahia? Bahia the Sutta? Bahia Sutta?
对不起, I don't remember that
Bahia
one.
Sutta. Okay.
Never mind. You can text me the sutta number and all. I can take a look at it. Okay. The intent in this practice, the purpose of this practice, I will repeat again, is to understand, see for yourself the driving force of craving. In observing craving, craving is a feeling. Craving is also a perception because you can see and understand that it's craving. Okay? Craving is obviously it's a feeling. Any form of craving, you realize it's present because it has a certain flavor. There is dukkha in it, right? All craving is painful because when you experience craving, you will experience a sense of dukkha. So it's unpleasant, okay? And I have said before that we mask that taste, the flavor of craving by gratifying. When you gratify, you remember the joy of gratification, you forgot the pain of that craving. So that's a mistake. The training requires the mind to accept the impermanent nature of feeling and sensation, and then it starts to become less seized, less interested in whether it's pleasant or painful. It sees them as transient. It's no longer fully invested on having them again and again. It accepts. The mind must learn to accept that all sensations are transient. All sensations are inherently unstable. They do not represent something substantial. So you learn to make do and you accept. And then the contentment that arises becomes the cessation of dukkha. The contentment that comes up becomes that cessation of dukkha. And this has to be in all aspects of life. Buddha was very kind. He pared it down to 3. Karma tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha. In case we all blur, right? Like 297 will die, but only 3. Karma means every sensation experienced through one of the sense doors, that experience comes from outside, external to you. So that's what taste, touch, smell, sight, sound. It's from the external world that is connected to your internal world by the sense door, the sense faculties. There is the experience, the contact, a feeling arises, craving starts. So that's karma tanha. Bhava tanha is the experience in the internal world, the arisings in the internal world, because we're so clever, we know how to rewind, replay, recreate, reproduce, reconstruct. You it's all bhava. See, it's all bhava. It's bhava tanha. So you choose, if we have a fixation with pleasure and taste, we will keep recreating deliberately. Then there are the painful experiences that we don't want to recreate, we don't want to revisit. But the more we don't want, the more they suka intrude. Those will be your vibhava tanha. I don't want. I don't want this and I don't want that. I don't want. So any don't want is also a craving. Craving to not want. Until the mind becomes naturally content because it finally understood that in all sensations, it's transient and not worthy of holding on to, not worthy of identifying with. All sensations are transient. Until the mind learns that and it kind of really digests it, it becomes a second nature. When it becomes second nature to be content and it's okay, it must be second nature. Must be second nature. When that happens, then whatever sensation, whatever contact brings no dukkha because there's no arising of craving. Get it? Now, if you shortcut the process, if you go and jam the contact before you understand the necessity, the critical essential of having the arising of contentment, before that happens, you go and short the process, don't contact, then what will happen is you never learn to let go. You actually never learn to let craving rest. We still don't know how to not reproduce, not to recreate. We still don't know that. We only know how to chop. Then what you will find is the practitioner actually becomes very hard. Actually, if you see a practitioner, a solid practitioner, right? Very proper, right? And kind of glide. But you feel that there is this hardness, that there is not this lightness. Why like that? Because actually they have cut everything without experiencing contentment. Contentment is what makes the mind light, unshackled. You cut without understanding, actually, you're only holding in check the craving. You wait until the right day, the right time, the auspicious day and auspicious time, they will flare up for you to see. That is when, remember, there is this story of how a bunch of monks wanted to visit the Buddha to declare to the Buddha that they had realized, and the monks said, don't keep them away, they're not ready yet. Tell them to go to the cemetery and stare. So all these monks had to go off, they were actually going to look for the Buddha, say, we are arahant. And the Buddha said, you tell, I think it was Ananda, tell them, go to the cemetery and stare. When they went to the cemetery, all the right time, right place, everything right, they saw naked body, they were shocked. They saw the naked body and they were shocked because it's literally pry open that craving, and whatever it is, they realize it's not it. So what did they do? I don't know. Maybe they were cut, I don't know, right? So when you deny yourself of contact, of course there's no feeling. You hold your mind so still, of course there's no feeling. It's neutral. So because of the neutral feeling, you think you're okay. But actually it's not. A truly enlightened mind, right? If you look at them, they're very light and they're very happy. There is an intrinsic joy in them. When you see them also, you smile. Not the same. You see the ones who are cut all over the place one, right? You actually feel a sternness, a heaviness. But you see some of these really wonderful sangha, right? Really wonderful practitioner. You can see the softness. There is nothing there. There's this lightness there. Why? Because they're not holding to anything. The reason why the Buddha talks about shackles, right? The fetters. Our favorite word, fetters. What we don't realize is we regularly fetter ourselves. through our own delusion, through our own wrong assumptions, we will fetter. We fetter with a view. Views. We fettered by cravings, by desires for tangible desires, things that we like. When there is a like, there's not a dislike, that was a fetter. That in itself is a fetter. When there is a sense of an I and an identity, that is a fetter. When there is this perception that this is real, the fetter is very strong. Because then you must jaga all the corner, make sure people don't laugh at you. How you laugh at me? You're so evil. You must look after that. This fixation about your image, who you are, what you are, and you spend your life chasing after, trying to shape the world perception of you. All these means you have, this is a fetter, right? This is a terrible fetter. But if your mind is so free and you don't have very strong views about a lot of things, then at least half the fetters are gone over there. Okay? One feels quite sian about all the thoughts that go on and on, repetitive. Sian about sankhara, but sankhara keeps coming. I cannot just nibida and leave it all. Afterwards, whether the thoughts will just come. After one experiences nibida, the thoughts will just stop, or they come, but we don't cling. I don't know. This one arahant style. This is at the level, when you get to this point of nibida and viraga, right? This is really the arahant's domain. So I can't answer your question. I can only guess, but when I guess, you please I guess only. Don't tell me, not like that. When you realize I can only share what I can understand from the scripture, okay, from the text. I cannot guarantee that the answers are definitely correct. When you use the word sian, one feels quite sian about the thoughts that go on and on. The two things there, one is the sian and two is the thoughts. They're two separate things, okay? I'm guessing that these are thoughts, random thoughts, and I'm guessing from the way it's said that the random thoughts are not quite, you don't feel quite in control of the thoughts. They come and they kind of flow around. When that's the case, you haven't quite hit any nibida. This is not nibida. Sian is not nibida, okay? Nibida is very cute. Nibida, as a mental state for the practitioner, it arises only when the practitioner has really reached a point of understanding how the mind works. So it will see conditional arising. It is actually just conditional arising, and he's observing the conditional arising, and there is a part that still leans towards recognizing the pleasure and leans towards that. So the nibida is recognizing how that mind leans towards pleasure, sensation of pleasure that arises. And seeing that is with that wisdom that he experiences nibida. Is with wisdom and experience of that mind. Wisdom, he knows the mind is still leaning. So he wants to practice. He wants to cultivate to the point where the sensation of preference and pleasure no longer arises. So when it arises and the mind leans, he can go, there's still the leaning. There's still this leaning. Why is it like that? This thing is wrong. It's off. It's a natural thing. Then, at some point, he realizes that by having a reaction, however subtle that reaction, is still a preference, is still a reaction. So he learned to become even more accepting. It's okay. Like that, no? It's okay. So as the mind cultivates contentment and acceptance as a mental energy, you will find that more and more things, the mind has no preference. It's very accepting. When it reaches it, because everything is just a conditional arising. Every experience is just an aggregate experience. Every experience is aggregate experience. So you see, when you look at aggregates, we see them as separate, but actually all aggregates are one. Your experience is an aggregate experience, okay? Why? A sensation, for you to recognize that this is pleasant, unpleasant, it is perception. That sits on consciousness. The only thing missing is Shankara. Because if you have no preference, no choosing, Shankara stops. But you still see it experience. You recognize something, when you recognize something, that's sanya. But sitting with sanya is vedana. It's just neutral vedana. So not so impactful. Don't remember it. You will remember it when you are elated. You're joyous. Ecstasy. Then you remember. Or it's excruciating. It's painful. You will remember. Anything else, par for the course. Don't quite care. Never mind. Don't bother. Your mind may be like that, right? Most minds are like that. That's why the Buddha says when you recall the past life, the pain and the pleasure, the big thing, then all the menian feelings, the neutral fellows, all make no impact. Think of it like a class of 100. Top student, last student, you remember. Everything in between. Was he there? I don't know. Something like that lah. So, feelings, same. When there is a perception, there must be a vedana, for sure. The whole thing is a vijnana. There's a brain that's processing everything, that's your rupa. Everything is there. If your mind is very still, very quiet, you can catch volitional formation and you don't fall. You don't choose. You don't react. No volitional formation. See that? And therefore, all experiences are the aggregates. That's why the Buddha always talk about panchakhandas, the 5 aggregates, because that's us. That's the one you can remember. Why grasping or clinging? Because these are the 5 where you will own, you will identify, and you will project and sum it as a self, an eternal self. Because these are the 5. You don't say at the part where they contact, right? At the part where they contact, you don't say aggregate of contact. You don't have that. But there's a contact. That also requires a mental state. It touched. It's a mental state. It touched. But you will remember Vedana. You will remember when you recognize it. When your attention is flying all over. Thousands and millions of substances, objects impact you at any one time. But that which you pay attention to, that's the only one you will remember if there is mindfulness, right? If you think about it, just sitting down here, you can hear the sound all over you. You can sense things. Aircon, you can sense things. You have a lot of external object bombarding you, but you only pay attention to the one you pay attention to, and you will remember the one that makes an impression on feelings. You see what I'm saying? So this thing about yoniso manasikara, right attention, it is very important when you must remember to steer it towards wholesome. The point is steer it towards wholesome, because by steering it towards wholesome, the mind will steady, goes calm. When the mind goes calm, you can recall, you can correlate with the Dhamma. This is how that sequence works. Okay? I know I take a long time. If you all don't mind, I just continue with the questions lah. Since people take the trouble to ask the question, must finish it. Huh? Having understood the tilakkhana and the 5 aggregates, does it mean one is on the awakening path? You must, the word understood is a little vague. If you understand tilakkhana absolutely, intuitively, experientially, all the words matter, huh? Absolutely, intuitively. What's the third one? Huh? Absolutely, intuitively, experientially. When your tilakkhana is at that level, pertaining to the aggregates, at that level, and you can see that there is a realization that they're all not real, no I. For you can really feel that change. Perhaps it means you are on the awakening path. Perhaps. Okay. I can't say yes or no. I don't know. I don't know you. I mean, it's if you find that you no longer cling to the idea of you, if you find that you don't cling onto ideas, whether it's of you or of others, then your aggregates understanding is Jun. Because even when you recognize the aggregates, but you still cling onto ideas of yourself and others, that means the clinging is still strong. The whole thing here is about clinging, how much you cling to something. It's a awakening. The thing about awakening, so the fetter, because fetter means they tie you down. In order to not be tied down, what must happen? You must let go. Let go of the idea of a you and the ideas of others. I can make a guess lah. I can only make a guess. So let's say you find that, let's just say that you used to be very judging. Human beings are very judging, right? Our typical habit is why like that, why like that, why you like that, why like that. Just very judging, right? If you find that this judging habit is starting to weaken and weaken a lot, if it's starting to weaken and it weakens a lot, it usually does suggest that you're holding to the idea of a being is also weakening. Okay? The regular mind judges all the time. It can't help it. Because the regular mind sees being as affirmed being. Not affirmed, but an affirmed being, true and established. Whereas if you begin to penetrate properly, and your understanding is starting to consolidate about the amorphous nature of being as the result ideas of being will start to dissipate. Sorry, I was muted. Okay, so I was saying happily about the difference between when there is a real grasp, understanding. When the understanding is firming up, the habit of the mind to identify and to judge, that part will start to diminish. Okay? Okay, you read it.
Question here is meditation crucial for our practice?
Yes, meditation is crucial for the practice. Crucial in the sense that you need to overcome some habits of a regular mind. Our regular mind can't quite understand, can't quite see the aggregates as transient. You can understand it conceptually, but to see it really as transient, right? It's temporary and it's rising, falling. That part has to really sink in deep. And meditation helps the mind to be able to settle enough to correlate, to be able to compare and correlate the teaching with what he can must witness in real time, how the mind works. It has to go that way. When the mind is still fixated about itself, caught up by objects, then cannot. It doesn't work like that. It would mean that the mind is not capable of maintaining a distance from the objects. You know what objects, right? Objects would be like your thoughts, the sight, sound, and forms, and so on and so forth. Your interaction with objects out there and in there. If your mind gets caught up and trapped by them, then it will just flow with sensations, emotions. It can't take one step back and see that it's impermanent, and see that the craving is what gives the sense of dukkha, and see that all these are not self and not mine and all those things. It can't see, cannot correlate properly. So the meditation is necessary for the mind to be able to maintain enough objectivity and distance to appreciate the mechanical activities as they are, to realize that the Buddha was right in his teaching, in his description, in his explanation, and in his prescription. He tells you what you must do so that you can uncling. You can accept, be content, and be able to let go. To do that, you have to break habits. Habits that you don't want to break. There is the sacrifice that we talk about is to break those habits. For many of us, when we go into the Dhamma, we actually would like to have our cake and eat it. Meaning, can we just stay the way we are but happier? Can we don't give up anything and be happier? And so on and so forth. So for many of us, having the cake means keeping the way we are with our lifestyles, with our attachments, with everything, but happier. No dukkha. It doesn't work like that. It cannot work like that. Dukkha is the result of how the mind works and how we, in a very delusional way, cling and chase. That's why dukkha arises. We have to first stop chasing and stop clinging. Okay? Any more?
One more. Can one meditate without knowledge of the Dhamma?
Oh, you can, but nothing is, you may not go anywhere with that meditation. If you tell me that if you have no knowledge of the Dhamma, but you can be enlightened like the Buddha, then you are saying that you are Buddha, meaning you can learn and be enlightened without the help of the teaching and the guidance of the teaching. And personally, I don't see how it can happen. The reason is because the mind in itself has built in delusional habits. Your lenses, you have to break at different levels. You think of it like if you're living underwater with zero idea that there is a world above water, outside of this watery world. How do you realize that world above your watery world? It's breaking out of what you are absolutely familiar with to see something existentially different. How do you do that? So you tell me without Dhamma, not possible. Highly unlikely. A reminder to everyone, this is actually very important. In my view, it's very important to remind ourselves of the importance of gratitude as a feature of our life. And we have all benefited much from having the opportunity to listen to the Dhamma, to learn the Dhamma, to change our life for the better. Many of us have come a long way from where we start to where we are today. Many of us have come a long way, and we owe it all to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Sometimes I forget to emphasize the Sangha as much as I've emphasized respect for Buddha and Dhamma. Without the Sangha, the first Sangha that collated all the teaching for us, and subsequent generations of Sangha that held on to that teaching for us. And today, in our time, a bunch of Sangha translating it into a language we can all appreciate and understand. Without all these generations of Sangha, we have no Dhamma. There will be no Dhamma for us. And then there are all these Sangha who show us, by the way that they practice, who show us, who give us faith that the Dhamma works. The teaching still works. It's a timeless power, charging by itself, recharging by itself. So, let us all just reflect on this. To do our part, give back to society. Honor our teacher by putting into practice his teaching, Chaga. So I would urge everyone to consider supporting, donating, helping, worthy charity, spiritual organization, Sangha community, whatever your choice is, do your part to preserve the teaching. I said here, we must never take for granted the blessing that we have enjoyed in this life. Don't take for granted that. We have had the good fortune of forerunners who had done it right by us. We must do it right for the ones who come after. May the Dhamma last long. May we continue to enjoy supportive conditions for learning and practice. And may we never deviate from the true teaching as long as life lasts. Yawa Nibbana. Okay.
Let us dedicate the merits from participating in this wholesome Dhamma activity to our departed relatives and friends. Idam me nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idam me nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idam me nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. closing chant. Mano pumbang gamma dhamma mano seta mano maya manasache padutena vasati va karoti va tato nang dukkhaṃ amang veti jhākhaṃ va vahato padam. Mano pumbang gamma dhamma mano seta mano maya manasache pasanena vasati va karoti va tato nang sukhaṃ mang veti ijaya va anapayini. Tato nang sukhaṃ mang veti ijaya va anapayini. Tato nang sukhaṃ mang veti ijaya va anapayini. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Sister Sylvia Bay. Thank you.